Imagine stepping into a world with no heaters, no thick modern blankets, no insulated homes, just raw nature, biting winds and temperatures that could freeze water solid overnight. Yet Native American tribes didn't just survive these brutal winters, they mastered them. Their sleeping methods were not simple habits. They were refined survival skills passed down through generations, a perfect blend of wisdom, ingenuity, and deep harmony with nature. Before we dive into these incredible winter sleeping secrets, make sure to subscribe if you love learning about history, survival, and ancient life. Your support helps bring more powerful stories like this to life. For countless generations, Native American tribes lived in some of the harshest winter environments on the continent, from the icy plains of the Great Plains to the dense, snow-heavy forests of the Northeast and the unforgiving highlands farther west. To survive these brutal seasons, they developed an ingenious understanding of architecture, insulation, and thermal control, creating winter homes that were far more sophisticated than most people imagine. Their winter lodges, earth lodges, wigwams, and tipis, were not simply shelters. They were warm, living spaces designed through centuries of trial, error, and environmental mastery. Each structure had features crafted specifically to trap heat, conserve energy, and protect entire families from freezing temperatures. These homes reveal how deeply connected Native people were to both the land and the climate, and how effectively they adapted to regions others might consider too harsh to inhabit. Earth lodges were among the most impressive of all winter structures. These were partially underground constructions, which immediately provided a major advantage. The earth itself acted as a natural insulator. Soil temperature below the surface remains relatively stable, even when winter storms rage above. By embedding their homes into the ground, tribes such as the Mandan, Hidatsa, Arikara, and others reduced their exposure to cutting winds and freezing night air. Builders would begin by digging a circular pit several feet deep. This pit defined the living space and allowed heat to settle rather than escape. Once the pit was prepared, heavy wood beams, often from cottonwood or other sturdy trees, were placed in a circular pattern, leaning inward like the ribs of a giant wooden dome. These beams formed the skeleton of the earth lodge, and their placement ensured stability, strength, and resistance to the weight of snow that could accumulate during harsh winters. Over this wooden frame, smaller branches, brush, and woven mats were layered, creating a kind of thermal cushion. The next step was a thick covering of earth. Dirt was packed onto the frame, often a foot or more thick, and this layer was crucial. It provided insulation powerful enough to keep the cold out and the warmth in. The thicker the earth layer, the better the lodge held heat. This insulated blanket absorbed sunlight during the day, releasing it slowly over the night, much like a modern passive solar home. When combined with internal fire heat, the interior stayed surprisingly warm even when blizzards roared across the plains. Inside these earth lodges, the temperature contrast with the outside environment could be dramatic. In regions where winter might plunge far below freezing, the interior could remain comfortably above freezing with only a modest fire burning. Many historical accounts describe earth lodges as almost cozy inside, warm enough that people could comfortably work, cook, and even sleep with minimal additional layers. This was no accident. It was the result of architectural decisions based on intimate knowledge of climate and natural materials. The placement of the door, the direction it faced, the size of the smoke hole at the top, and the types of materials used in each layer all influenced how warm the lodge would remain through the coldest nights. Wigwams, used by tribes across the northeastern forests, were another remarkable example of winter engineering. Built from flexible saplings bent into arched frames, wigwams were typically dome-shaped or cone-shaped, depending on the region and tribe. The curved shape helped shed snow easily, preventing collapse under heavy snowfall. Bark panels formed the outer covering, often from birch, elm, or other trees with sturdy, naturally insulated bark. These bark sheets were woven, overlapped, and tied tightly to the wooden frame. When winter came, tribes added even more layers to these coverings, extra bark woven reed mats, or thick layers of dried grass and brush. Each layer trapped air, creating pockets of insulation much like the layers in modern winter clothing. Because wigwams were built in forested regions, tribes could use the natural materials around them to enhance warmth. Evergreen boughs, especially spruce or pine, were commonly used on the interior. These branches helped insulate the floors and walls, adding softness and warmth while releasing a natural forest scent. On particularly cold nights, additional coverings were hung inside the wigwam, creating an inner lining that trapped heat even more effectively. Some tribes even created double-walled wigwams, where 2 layers of bark or mats were spaced apart slightly to trap still air, which dramatically increased insulation. In a way, this reflected an advanced understanding of the same principle that makes down jackets so warm. Layers trap air, and trapped air retains heat. Fire was central to warmth in wigwams as well, typically built in a pit directly in the center of the lodging. The fire pit's location allowed heat to rise evenly and circulate within the curved structure. A small smoke hole at the top served as ventilation, releasing smoke but minimizing heat loss. The people who lived there constantly monitored this opening, adjusting coverings depending on wind direction or temperature. They understood that too much ventilation let heat escape, but too little caused smoke buildup. Through generations of practice, they perfected the balance, maintaining homes that were warm, smoke-free, and comfortable throughout the harshest months. Teepees were another form of winter shelter, particularly iconic among plains tribes such as the Lakota, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Blackfoot. Although many people today associate teepees with mobility and warm season travel, these cone-shaped structures were also intelligently adapted for cold weather. Unlike earth lodges or wigwams, teepees were designed to be portable, yet they still provided impressive insulation when properly prepared for winter. The standard teepee covering was made from buffalo hides carefully stitched together. Hides were a natural insulator, thick and durable enough to resist cutting winter winds. For winter months, many tribes used double-layered coverings with an inner liner hung around the inside walls. This liner created a crucial air gap between the interior and exterior layers, once again trapping air and keeping warmth inside. The cone shape of the teepee was aerodynamic, directing icy winds upward and away rather than letting them penetrate the living area. The adjustable smoke flaps at the top allowed tribes to manage airflow with remarkable precision. During winter, people positioned the flaps so that rising smoke escaped while warm air circulated downward. Teepees were also raised slightly off the frozen ground, often with groundwork laid beneath the hides. Evergreen boughs, buffalo robes, thick mats, and hides were placed on the floor, creating a soft, insulated base that shielded sleepers from the cold earth. Step inside a winter teepee after a fire had been burning for hours, and you would feel a surprising level of warmth, even in freezing conditions. Every detail of these winter lodges demonstrated an understanding of thermodynamics long before the term existed. The use of circular or conical shapes helped maintain structural strength while minimizing cold air pockets. The materials were chosen for their natural insulating properties: bark that resisted moisture, hides that trapped heat, soil that stored thermal energy, and wood that reduced heat transfer. Even the placement and maintenance of the fire had a science behind it. Because smoke rises, tribes used the natural behavior of heat to maintain comfortable temperatures without modern tools. These structures were living lessons in energy efficiency, born from necessity and perfected over countless winters. The construction of insulated winter lodges was also deeply connected to culture, community, and seasonal rhythms. Building them required cooperation. Families, sometimes even entire clans, worked together to gather materials, bend saplings, haul wood beams, cut bark, and pack earth. These processes strengthened community bonds and preserved traditional knowledge. Children learned alongside elders, watching techniques passed down through generations. Young people learned not only how to build a shelter, but why each element mattered: the angle of the frame, the thickness of the covering, the space left for ventilation, the direction the door should face to block winter winds. Every detail had a purpose, and the knowledge was valued as part of the tribe's survival wisdom. Inside these insulated winter homes, life continued even while nature slept beneath the snow. Families cooked meals, told stories, crafted tools, and shared warmth with one another. The walls made from the land itself felt protective, almost alive with the heat of the fire and the voices of generations. Winter became a time of reflection, storytelling, passing down knowledge, and strengthening kinship ties. The lodge provided not just physical protection from the cold, but emotional and spiritual shelter as well. Many tribes believed that the warmth of the lodge reflected the warmth of the family and the spirits, who watched over them. The effectiveness of these structures is apparent when we consider that many European settlers struggled to survive their first winters on the continent, while Native American tribes had thrived for centuries. Settlers often relied on simple cabins with gaps in the walls, poor ventilation, or inefficient fireplaces, leading to both heat loss and smoke-filled rooms. Meanwhile, native lodges maintained steady warmth, efficient airflow, and insulation that rivaled modern eco-friendly homes. In many cases, settlers eventually adopted native construction techniques or sought help from tribes to learn how to build better winter shelters. What makes these insulated winter lodges truly remarkable is not just their practicality, but their sustainability. Every material used came from the environment and nothing was wasted. Bark was harvested without killing trees. Hides were used from animals taken for food, and earth came directly from the building site. When a lodge was abandoned or rebuilt, the materials naturally decomposed back into the land. There was no reliance on imported goods, processed materials, or artificial insulation. These homes were examples of responsible engineering, structures that worked with nature rather than against it. Even today, architects and survival experts study traditional Native American winter lodges for their efficiency. Earth-sheltered homes, passive solar design, layered insulation, and natural ventilation systems are all concepts embedded in modern eco-housing. Yet native tribes developed these principles long before any formal science existed, relying solely on lived experience, careful observation, and an intimate understanding of their environment. Their winter lodges embody a wisdom that modern society is only beginning to appreciate again. The story of these insulated homes is a story of adaptation, intelligence, and deep respect for the land. Tribes built homes not to fight against nature, but to coexist with it. Every winter, as storms swept across the plains or settled into forest valleys, families retreated into these warm, carefully crafted spaces. The fire crackled softly, the wind howled outside, and the walls held firm. Inside, people felt safe. Children drifted to sleep wrapped in hides. Elders shared legends that warmed hearts just as much as the fire warmed the air, and the structure itself stood as a testament to human ingenuity. These lodges were more than architecture. They were survival, tradition, and identity. They represented the merging of practical needs with cultural expression. They were a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, humans can adapt with creativity, wisdom, and cooperation. The Earth Lodge, the Wigwam, and the Winter Tipi each tell a chapter of the story of Native American resilience. Through them, we see how deeply the people understood their land, how effectively they used natural materials, and how skillfully they crafted warm sanctuaries against the cold. These structures stand as proof that knowledge, passed down through generations, can create homes that protect, nurture, and endure even the coldest winter. For countless generations, Native American tribes inhabited regions of North America where winter could be both long and brutal, with temperatures plummeting far below freezing and snow blanketing the land for months on end. From the wind-swept Great Plains to the dense forests of the Northeast and the highlands further west, these communities developed an intimate understanding of the environment around them, particularly how to survive and even thrive during the harshest months. Central to this survival was the creation of insulated winter homes, earth lodges, wigwams, and tipis, which were far more sophisticated than most modern observers might imagine. These structures were not mere shelters from the cold. They were intricate, living systems designed to conserve heat, withstand storms, and maintain comfort in climates that would challenge even the most prepared modern humans. Earth lodges represented one of the most advanced examples of winter construction among native tribes, particularly on the Great Plains and in the river valleys where the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara lived. These lodges were partially subterranean, a feature that immediately gave them a significant thermal advantage. By embedding their homes into the earth, tribes could take advantage of the natural stability of underground temperatures. Even when blizzards swept across the plains and wind chills threatened to freeze exposed skin within minutes, the interior of an earth lodge remained remarkably temperate. The construction process began with digging a circular pit, deep enough to form a foundation that would reduce contact with the freezing air and wind above. These pits were carefully measured and aligned to accommodate the number of family members. the expected size of the fire, and the flow of air for ventilation. Once the pit was prepared, builders placed substantial wooden beams in a radial pattern, leaning inward to create a dome-like skeleton. These beams, often harvested from cottonwood or other sturdy trees, were selected not only for strength but for their ability to insulate and slow heat transfer. Smaller branches and brush were woven into the framework, forming a lattice that would support layers of earth on top. This framework was then covered with a thick layer of soil, sometimes more than a foot deep, which acted as a natural thermal buffer. During the day, the soil absorbed the sun's heat, and at night, it released warmth slowly, stabilizing indoor temperatures in a way that would have amazed settlers and modern engineers alike. Historical accounts frequently note that inside these earth lodges, families could remain comfortably above freezing even when the external temperature dropped dangerously low. The interior of an earth lodge was carefully designed to optimize warmth and usability. Fire pits were centrally located, providing both heat and a cooking source. The smoke escaped through a small opening at the top of the lodge, which could be adjusted depending on wind direction and temperature, ensuring that the air remained breathable without losing excessive warmth. Sleeping areas were often lined with animal hides and cushioned with layers of branches or reeds to create a soft, insulated bed. Families arranged their living spaces to take advantage of heat flow, positioning the fire and sleeping areas so that warmth radiated evenly throughout the lodge. The result was a living environment that combined functionality, comfort, and a deep understanding of natural thermal dynamics. Wigwams, commonly used by tribes in the forests of the Northeast and Great Lakes region, offered a different approach to winter shelter, but were equally effective. Unlike earth lodges, wigwams were fully above ground and typically dome-shaped or cone-shaped, designed to withstand heavy snowfall without collapsing. Flexible saplings were bent into arches to form the frame, and bark panels, often from birch or elm trees, were tightly woven and layered over the frame to create walls. These bark coverings had natural insulating properties, resisting wind and retaining warmth. During the winter months, additional layers were added. Mats woven from reeds, extra bark sheets, or even dried grass. The layering trapped air between the walls, creating pockets of insulation that functioned much like modern double-pane windows, significantly reducing heat loss. Inside the wigwam, families created an environment that combined warmth, comfort, and functionality. Evergreen boughs, such as spruce or pine, were often placed on the floors, serving both as insulation from the cold earth and as a soft surface for sleeping. The central fire pit provided heat and light, while smoke holes allowed for ventilation. Like earth lodges, wigwams required careful attention to airflow, with adjustments made depending on wind direction and intensity. Families could fine-tune the balance between warmth and ventilation with experience and observation, maintaining an interior climate that protected against freezing temperatures while minimizing the hazards of smoke inhalation. The dome shape of the structure further enhanced its efficiency, preventing drafts from forming and allowing heat to circulate naturally. Tipis, often associated with the nomadic plains tribes, were another highly effective winter shelter. While tipis are widely recognized for their portability and use in warmer seasons, they were also ingeniously adapted for cold weather survival. Made from carefully stitched buffalo hide stretched over wooden poles, tipis offered insulation, wind resistance, and the ability to manage smoke and airflow. Many tribes used double-layered hides in the winter, creating an inner liner that hung inside the tipi to trap a layer of air between the interior and exterior surfaces. This design dramatically improved thermal retention, keeping occupants warm even in sub-zero temperatures. The conical shape of the tipi was particularly advantageous during winter storms. Its aerodynamic form allowed strong winds to flow smoothly around the structure, reducing the risk of collapse or drafts. Adjustable smoke flaps at the top of the tipi enabled precise control over ventilation, allowing rising smoke from the fire to escape while minimizing heat loss. Flooring inside tipis was typically insulated with layers of hides, boughs, or mats, creating a barrier between the cold ground and the occupants. Even in the harshest weather, a well-prepared winter tipi could provide warmth, comfort, and protection for an entire family, demonstrating a level of engineering sophistication that many modern structures still struggle to achieve without artificial heating systems. The materials used in these winter lodges were chosen with remarkable wisdom and sustainability. Every component came from the surrounding environment: soil from the building site, wood from nearby forests, bark harvested without killing trees, and hides obtained from animals hunted for food. Nothing was wasted, and all materials returned to the environment naturally once they were no longer needed. Ensuring that construction had minimal ecological and co-beator. The techniques used to construct these lodges were passed down through generations, representing not only practical knowledge but also cultural and spiritual wisdom. Children learned alongside elders, observing the precise placement of beams, the careful layering of bark and hides, and the adjustment of smoke flaps. Every detail had a purpose, and every decision was informed by centuries of accumulated experience. In addition to the physical construction of their homes, Native Americans employed cultural and communal practices that enhanced winter survival. Families often slept together, sharing body heat to increase warmth. Sleeping arrangements were carefully planned, with adults and children positioned strategically around the fire and bedding to maximize heat distribution. Clothing and bedding were layered, with leather garments, fur-lined blankets, and robes adding insulation. Some tribes even heated stones in the fire and placed them near sleeping areas to radiate warmth through the night. These practices demonstrate an understanding of thermal physics and human physiology, applied in practical and sustainable ways that allowed people to endure some of the most extreme winter conditions in North America. The combination of structural ingenuity, material selection, and cultural practices made insulated winter lodges remarkably effective. Historical accounts from early European settlers often highlight their amazement at how native tribes could maintain warmth in freezing conditions where the settlers themselves struggled. While European cabins often leaked heat and filled with smoke from inefficient fireplaces, native lodges provided comfortable, safe, and well-ventilated environments. The settlers quickly recognized the superiority of these traditional designs, adopting native techniques in some cases to improve their own survival chances during harsh winters. Beyond their practical effectiveness, these winter homes were deeply embedded in the cultural and spiritual lives of the tribes. The act of building a lodge was a communal endeavor, strengthening social bonds and reinforcing cultural identity. Inside the lodges, families shared stories, conducted rituals, prepared food, and passed on knowledge. The fire at the center symbolized warmth and life, while the layered walls of earth, bark, and hides represented protection, wisdom, and connection to the land. Winter was not only a season of survival, but a time of community, reflection, and continuity. These lodges were not merely shelters. They were spaces where cultural memory, social cohesion, and practical survival intersected. The sophistication of native winter architecture continues to inspire modern architects and survivalists. Concepts such as earth-sheltered homes, passive solar design, layered insulation, and efficient ventilation are all embodied in these traditional lodges. Yet long before formal science or modern engineering existed, Native Americans applied these principles through observation, experimentation, and adaptation. Their winter homes illustrate that human ingenuity, when combined with respect for nature and cultural knowledge, can produce living environments that are efficient, sustainable, and enduring. These insulated lodges were also flexible, adaptable to local climate and available resources. Tribes adjusted the size, shape, and materials of their lodges depending on regional conditions, the severity of winter, and the mobility needs of the group. Some lodges were intended for long-term settlement, while others, particularly tipis, could be quickly dismantled and relocated if hunting grounds shifted or weather patterns demanded movement. This adaptability ensured that tribes could survive across a vast range of environments, from the freezing northern plains to forested river valleys with heavy snowfalls. Within the insulated walls of their lodges, families experienced not only physical warmth, but also emotional and spiritual comfort. The fire's glow, the soft layers of hides, and the presence of loved ones created an environment of security and connection, fostering resilience during the long, dark winter months. Children grew up learning the rhythms of the seasons, the importance of preparation, and the skills needed to thrive in their environment. Elders taught wisdom about climate, wildlife, and survival strategies, ensuring that knowledge was passed down through generations. Every aspect of life in a winter lodge was intertwined with the environment, from the placement of the fire to the direction of the doorway, from the layering of mats to the communal sleeping arrangements. The effectiveness, elegance, and sustainability of insulated winter lodges are a testament to Native American ingenuity. By combining architecture, material science, and social organization, tribes created living spaces that allowed them not only to survive, but to maintain a vibrant cultural life in extreme conditions. Earth lodges, wigwams, and tipis were more than shelters. They were reflections of a deep understanding of the natural world, practical problem solving, and the enduring human spirit. In studying these lodges, modern audiences gain not only insight into historical survival strategies, but also inspiration for sustainable and thoughtful living today. Even in contemporary times, the lessons embedded in these structures remain relevant. Architects and designers study traditional native techniques to create energy-efficient buildings that work with, rather than against, nature. Survival experts look to the layering of materials, the use of insulation, and the arrangement of space within lodges as models for enduring harsh conditions without modern technology. The ingenuity of these winter homes demonstrates that effective design does not always require complex tools or industrial resources. Careful observation, understanding of materials, and adaptation to local conditions can achieve remarkable results. The legacy of insulated winter lodges is thus both practical and inspirational, offering timeless lessons about human resilience, ingenuity, and harmony with the natural world. Through centuries of trial, observation, and adaptation, Native Americans perfected winter shelters that combine practicality, comfort, sustainability, and cultural significance. From the partially subterranean earth lodges of the Plains tribes to the bark-covered wigwams of the northeast forests and the double-lined tipis of the nomadic Plains people, each structure reflects an extraordinary mastery of environmental knowledge and human engineering. These lodges were more than mere survival tools. They were homes, centers of culture, and symbols of a people deeply attuned to the rhythms of nature. In every beam, layer of bark, and carefully placed fire pit, one sees the legacy of generations who understood that warmth. For countless generations, Native American tribes understood that fire was far more than a tool for cooking or signaling. It was the heart and soul of their homes, particularly during the long, brutal winters. Across the Great Plains, the forests of the Northeast, and the river valleys of the Midwest, families depended on a carefully controlled fire at the center of their lodges, wigwams, and tipis to survive freezing temperatures, heavy snow, and biting winds. The fire was not merely a source of warmth. It was a lifeline, a communal gathering point, and a key element of a sophisticated, sustainable heating system that predated chimneys, stoves, or modern insulation by centuries. Every aspect of life, from sleep arrangements to social interaction, cooking, and even spiritual practices, revolved around the fire, demonstrating a remarkable understanding of heat, airflow, and energy management that allowed tribes to thrive in some of North America's harshest climates. In earth lodges, which were partially underground and used extensively by the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara, the central fire was positioned with precision. Lodges were typically circular, and the fire occupied the middle of this circle, allowing warmth to radiate evenly toward the outer walls. The heat generated by the fire was absorbed by the wooden beams, the packed earth walls, and the soil covering, creating a natural thermal battery that kept the interior remarkably stable throughout the night. Even in temperatures that dropped well below freezing, families could remain comfortable indoors, relying on the stored heat and the radiant warmth of the fire itself. The central placement of the fire was no accident. It maximized efficiency, minimized drafts, and ensured that every corner of the lodge benefited from the heat. People slept, ate, crafted tools, and shared stories around this central hearth, with every activity oriented toward maintaining and benefiting from the warmth it provided. Smoke management was equally critical. Native architects and builders recognized that smoke could be deadly if allowed to accumulate, yet venting too much could sap the lodge of precious heat. In earth lodges, a smoke hole was carefully constructed at the top of the dome, often fitted with a movable covering that could be adjusted depending on wind direction, temperature, and the intensity of the fire. This simple yet sophisticated ventilation system allowed smoke to rise and exit without significantly reducing indoor warmth. Families quickly learned to control airflow, using small adjustments to maintain a balance between fresh air, smoke evacuation, and heat retention. The understanding of this balance was passed down through generations, representing a type of practical engineering knowledge honed over centuries of observation and experimentation. In wigwams, often found in the forested regions of the Northeast and Great Lakes, the central fire played a similarly essential role, though its placement had to account for a different structure. Wigwams were smaller, dome-shaped, and made of saplings covered in bark or mats, which meant that heat distribution was slightly different than in the more massive earth lodges. Here, the fire served as both a source of warmth and a communal focal point. The smoke hole at the apex of the dome allowed smoke to escape, and the curved walls helped circulate heat evenly throughout the interior. Because these homes were smaller, less heat was needed to maintain a comfortable temperature, but careful attention was still required to ensure that smoke did not overwhelm the inhabitants. Families would build small, controlled fires that could burn throughout the night without consuming too much wood or producing excessive smoke, demonstrating a refined understanding of energy, efficiency, and fire management. Tipis associated with nomadic plains tribes such as the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Blackfoot offered another fascinating example of fire-centered winter living. While often recognized for their portability, tipis were ingeniously adapted for cold weather survival. The conical shape naturally directed wind around the structure, preventing drafts from undermining the fire's efficiency. A small fire pit placed at the center of the tipi provided heat for the entire interior. Because the walls were made of buffalo hides, which are thick and insulating, the heat radiating from the fire was retained effectively, maintaining a comfortable environment even in sub-zero conditions. Adjustable smoke flaps at the top of the tipi allowed families to control airflow, releasing smoke while keeping warmth contained. This simple yet elegant system exemplifies how design, materials, and fire management combine to create a sustainable, effective heating method long before modern technology existed. It was central to daily life, influencing how people organized their activities within the home. Families slept around the fire in layers of hides and blankets, using shared body heat to enhance warmth. Cooking was done directly over the fire or with heated stones placed near the edges of the hearth, allowing meals to be prepared without losing precious heat. Crafts such as tool-making, weaving, and leatherwork were performed near the fire, where light and warmth allowed for concentration and dexterity. Storytelling, ceremonies, and social gatherings naturally occurred around this focal point, reinforcing family bonds and cultural traditions. The fire thus served simultaneously as a physical and social center, shaping both survival and community life. Managing a fire through the night required skill, attention, and preparation. Families collected and stored wood, understanding which types burned longest and produced the most heat. Hardwoods such as oak and hickory were favored for their dense, long-lasting coals, while softer woods like pine or cedar were used for quick-starting fires or for supplementary heat. Fires were built in layers, with small kindling igniting larger logs that provided hours of sustained warmth. Stones were sometimes heated in the fire and then placed around sleeping areas to radiate heat slowly, a practice that demonstrates an intuitive understanding of thermal storage and conduction. Even the placement of bedding and the arrangement of sleeping positions were influenced by the fire, with elders and children positioned to benefit most from radiant warmth. Seasonal preparation was another key aspect of fire-centered living. In the autumn months, families gathered and stored not only food but also firewood sufficient to last through the coldest nights. Lodges were inspected and repaired, with insulating materials added or replaced to ensure maximum heat retention. Smoke holes were adjusted and tested, fire pits were reinforced, and bedding was layered in anticipation of winter. These preparatory measures were crucial for survival, reflecting the understanding that a well-maintained fire, combined with proper insulation and organization, could be the difference between comfort and exposure to life-threatening cold. The cultural significance of fire cannot be overstated. In many tribes, the fire was considered a sacred element, symbolizing life, warmth, and protection. Ceremonial practices often involved offerings or prayers at the hearth, particularly during the winter months when survival was most precarious. Maintaining the fire was both a practical and spiritual responsibility, with family members taking turns tending the flames, ensuring that it never went out. The fire represented continuity, linking generations through a shared understanding of its importance and its power to sustain life. Fire also played a role in preserving health and preventing illness. In freezing temperatures, exposure to cold could lead to frostbite, hypothermia, or respiratory issues. The fire's warmth not only provided comfort but protected the body from extreme cold. Smoke, while carefully controlled, had secondary benefits in repelling insects or sanitizing the air to some degree. The radiant heat encouraged circulation, improved comfort during sleep, and allowed people to remain active indoors even when the outdoor environment was harsh and unwelcoming. Social structure within the home often revolved around the fire. Elders who carried knowledge about fire management, lodge construction, and survival strategies typically position themselves near the hearth to advise and instruct younger members. Children learned by observation and participation, understanding the subtleties of building, tending, and controlling the fire. Skills such as selecting appropriate wood, starting the fire efficiently, maintaining coals, and positioning bedding for optimal warmth were transmitted through daily practice and oral tradition. The fire thus became a teacher, passing on practical knowledge critical for survival and fostering a deep sense of responsibility and care within the family unit. The fire's centrality also influenced the architectural design of lodges and tipis. Circular layouts, dome shapes, and conical structures all maximized heat distribution and minimized loss. Materials were chosen not only for insulation, but also for their interaction with heat. Wood absorbed and slowly released warmth. Hides reflected heat inward, and earth layers acted as thermal buffers. The strategic placement of vents and smoke holes ensured that warmth stayed contained while smoke escaped. Efficient. These design choices were informed by generations of observation and experimentation, revealing a sophisticated understanding of thermodynamics long before it was formally studied in modern science. During extreme weather, the fire was often supplemented with other heating techniques. Stones heated in the hearth were moved closer to sleeping areas. Animal skins were placed around fire pits to reflect heat, and families huddled together to share body warmth. The combination of structural design, materials, and human ingenuity created a resilient heating system, capable of supporting families through the coldest nights of winter. Fire management also required attention to resource sustainability. Wood had to be harvested thoughtfully, ensuring that nearby forests remained productive for future use. Families balanced the need for immediate warmth with long-term conservation, understanding that survival depended on maintaining a reliable supply of fuel. This careful stewardship of resources reflected a broader ethos of living in harmony with nature, integrating practical needs with environmental awareness. Even in communal settings, the fire served as a hub for interaction and cooperation. Multiple families or extended clans might gather in large lodges, sharing a central hearth while maintaining personal sleeping areas nearby. The fire's warmth facilitated social cohesion, allowing storytelling, instruction, and ritual activities to occur in comfort. This arrangement not only improved survival chances but reinforced cultural identity and strengthened community bonds. Over time, these fire-centered practices became deeply embedded, in the collective knowledge of each tribe. Every aspect of lodge construction, fire management, and winter survival was informed by centuries of trial, observation, and adaptation. New generations inherited this wisdom, learning to respect and maintain the fire as both a practical necessity and a cultural cornerstone. In this way, the hearth functioned not only as a physical source of warmth, but as a symbolic anchor for continuity, resilience, and life itself. The ingenuity of these systems is particularly striking when compared to early European settler homes, which often struggled to retain heat and required constant attention to inefficient fireplaces. Native American lodges and tipis demonstrated that survival in extreme winter conditions was possible with careful planning, deep environmental understanding, and skillful use of a central fire. For fire. These homes illustrate how humans can manipulate natural elements intelligently and sustainably, creating environments that are safe, comfortable, and conducive to social and cultural life, even in the harshest climates. The fire at the center of the home, therefore, was more than a practical tool. It was a masterful integration of architecture, materials, social organization, and cultural practice. It provided heat, light, and protection, enabled cooking, crafting, and sleeping, and served as a social and spiritual focal point. Through careful placement, controlled ventilation, sustainable resource use, and intergenerational knowledge transmission, Native American tribes transformed a simple element, fire, into the cornerstone of winter survival. Every ember, every spark, and every flame reflected a deep understanding of human needs, environmental constraints, and the power of community. In essence, the hearth was the beating heart of native winter life, sustaining both bodies and spirits throughout the long, cold months. Through centuries of practice, observation, and adaptation, fire management within lodges and tipis became a refined skill, blending practical survival strategies with cultural meaning and environmental stewardship. Whether in the earth-covered domes of the plains, the bark-lined wigwams of the Northeast, or the conical tipis of the nomadic plains tribes, the controlled central fire exemplified ingenuity, resilience, and harmony with nature. In studying these practices today, modern observers gain insight not only into historical survival techniques, but also into timeless principles of sustainable living, resource management, and the centrality of community in human resilience. The fire was, and remains, a testament to the extraordinary ability of humans to thrive in challenging environments through intelligence, cooperation, and respect for the natural world. For Native American tribes living in regions where winters could be merciless, the importance of staying warm could not be overstated. Beyond the structure of their lodges, wigwams, and tipis, survival often depended on the careful use of natural materials to insulate the human body against the freezing air. Among these materials, animal hides and fur blankets were not merely conveniences. They were essential tools for survival, carefully selected, treated, and arranged to maximize heat retention. Buffalo hides, deer skins, and other fur coverings played a central role in keeping families warm through nights when temperatures could plummet far below freezing. The knowledge of how to acquire, prepare, and utilize these materials was passed down through generations and represented a sophisticated understanding of thermal insulation, biology, and environmental adaptation. Buffalo hides were particularly prized on the Great Plains, where the bison population provided both sustenance and the raw materials needed for winter survival. After a successful hunt, the hides were carefully removed and treated to prevent decay, a process that could take days and required specialized knowledge. The hides were first scraped to remove fat, flesh, and hair clumps, then soaked in a mixture of water and natural tannins derived from tree bark, roots, or other plants. This tanning process not only preserved the hide but also softened it, making it pliable and comfortable to sleep upon. The result was a durable, thick material capable of trapping body heat, resisting wind, and providing a protective layer between the sleeper and the frozen ground. This ongoing care required attention and knowledge, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of how natural materials interacted with environmental conditions and human use. Animal hide bedding was not only practical, but deeply woven into cultural and social practices. Sleeping arrangements often reflected family structure, age, and status, with elders or heads of the household positioned to benefit most from insulation or warmth. Children slept nearby, sharing body heat and learning the proper use and care of hides. In some tribes, ceremonial or symbolic practices were associated with particular hides or blankets, linking survival with cultural identity and spiritual beliefs. Fur blankets could be adorned with decorative elements, painted symbols, or stitched patterns, blending functionality with artistic expression and cultural continuity. The warmth provided by these materials thus carried both physical and symbolic significance, reinforcing the interconnectedness of survival, social structure, and cultural identity. Hides and blankets also played a crucial role in mobility and flexibility. In nomadic or semi-nomadic tribes, bedding needed to be portable, durable, and easy to pack or carry. Tipis, for instance, were often outfitted with layered hides that could be folded, rolled, or adjusted to suit different climates or travel conditions. Families adapted their bedding to seasonal needs, adding more layers during the coldest months or reducing bulk during transitional periods. This adaptability allowed tribes to maintain warmth and comfort, even while moving across the landscape, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of how insulation, layering, and human activity intersected. Beyond sleeping, hides and fur blankets were employed in a variety of other survival contexts. They were used to line clothing, wrap infants, create temporary shelters, or insulate around fire pits. Heated stones could be wrapped in hides to provide radiant warmth through the night, while layers of fur on walls or platforms further enhanced the retention of heat within lodges. The versatility of these materials made them indispensable in a range of winter survival strategies, from maintaining body temperature to protecting food or supplies from frost. In essence, hides and fur blankets were multifunctional tools that extended far beyond simple bedding, integrating into the broader ecological and domestic system of native life. The preparation and use of hides also demonstrated remarkable ecological knowledge. Tribes understood the importance of selecting animals at the right time of year, harvesting hides while fur was thickest and most insulating. They used tanning methods that preserved the natural properties of the hides while ensuring durability, often employing plant-based solutions that were renewable, non-toxic, and environmentally compatible. In doing so, they maintained a balance between human needs and ecosystem sustainability, ensuring that their practices could be repeated season after season without depleting local resources. This careful stewardship of natural materials reflects a level of environmental intelligence that modern societies often strive to emulate. The social and educational aspects of hide use were also significant. Children learned how to care for bedding, layer blankets, and make adjustments based on temperature or family size. Elders instructed younger generations in the art of hide preparation, teaching techniques for scraping, tanning, sewing, and arranging bedding for maximum warmth. This intergenerational knowledge transmission ensured that survival skills were preserved and adapted over time, embedding practical wisdom into the cultural fabric of the tribe. By participating in these practices, younger members developed both practical competence and a sense of responsibility toward their family and community. Moreover, the tactile and sensory qualities of hides contributed to their effectiveness. The soft texture of well-tanned fur provided comfort, while the natural density and loft of fur fibers trapped air and reduced heat loss. Hides were often scented with natural elements such as cedar or herbs, which could deter insects or add a subtle aromatic quality to sleeping areas. The combination of sensory comfort, insulation, and cultural significance transformed simple animal hides into sophisticated, multifunctional tools for winter survival. Fire, central to lodge warmth, worked in concert, with hides and blankets. Placing bedding near a hearth or arranging fur layers to capture radiant heat allowed families to maximize warmth efficiently. Heated stones wrapped in hides provided additional thermal storage, radiating heat through the night. This interplay between structure, fire, and bedding created a microenvironment in which humans could endure freezing temperatures without modern technology. The system exemplifies the deep integration of natural materials, environmental understanding, and human ingenuity in native winter survival strategies. The use of hides also extended to ceremonial and symbolic practices, reinforcing cultural identity alongside practical function. Certain furs or decorated hides were reserved for specific rituals, family ceremonies, or social status, intertwining survival strategies with spiritual and social structures. The care, arrangement, and protection of these hides reflected respect for animals, reverence for ancestral knowledge, and the centrality of warmth and shelter in community life. Hides were not only tools but embodiments of the relationship between people, land, and animals, representing a holistic approach to survival, culture, and ecology. In winter, when the world outside was white with snow and the temperature plummeted, the combination of buffalo hides, deer skins, and fur blankets ensured that families could sleep, rest, and recover safely. Layered strategically on floors, bedding platforms, or raised mats, these materials trapped heat efficiently, creating warm sleeping zones that preserved life and energy. The adaptability of hides, thermal properties, and their integration into daily routines highlight the extraordinary resourcefulness and environmental intelligence of native communities. Generations of observation, practice, and refinement produced systems of bedding and insulation that rival modern materials in effectiveness while maintaining ecological sustainability and cultural continuity. Even today, the principles underlying the use of hides and fur for warmth continue to inspire designers, survivalists, and researchers. Understanding how layers trap air, how materials respond to moisture and cold, and how insulation interacts with radiant heat informs modern applications in bedding, clothing, and shelter design. Native American practices demonstrate that survival in extreme winter climates can be achieved not solely through technology, but through careful observation, selection of natural resources, and intelligent application of knowledge. These insights remind us that human ingenuity, when combined with respect for nature and community, can produce remarkably effective solutions to environmental challenges. Through meticulous preparation, intergenerational knowledge transfer, and sophisticated layering techniques, Native Americans turned animal hides into more than just bedding. They became essential instruments of survival, comfort, and cultural expression. From buffalo hides laid on earth, lodge floors to deer skins sewn into layered mats, and fur blankets draped for warmth, each material played a vital role in enduring the harshest winters. In every layer, every texture, and every arrangement, one can see a legacy of skill, observation, and adaptation that allowed entire communities to thrive despite conditions that would challenge even modern populations. Animal hide bedding and blankets were, and remain, a testament to the ingenuity, resilience, and environmental intelligence of native peoples, embodying centuries of survival knowledge and cultural continuity. In the harsh winters of North America, survival often depended on more than just fire, clothing, or animal hides. The very ground itself posed a threat to warmth and comfort. Cold, frozen earth would draw heat from the human body, leading to discomfort, illness, or even frostbite over time. Native American tribes in response developed the ingenious practice of elevated sleeping platforms, a simple yet highly effective solution that combined practical engineering, environmental understanding, and cultural knowledge. These platforms, constructed from raised wooden frameworks, woven mats, or layers of natural materials like cedar boughs, allowed families to sleep safely above the cold ground, preserving body heat and improving overall survival. During the most unforgiving months of the year, the concept may seem straightforward. But the execution required a deep understanding of materials, structural integrity, and thermal efficiency. The most basic form of elevated sleeping platforms consisted of wooden frameworks. Tribes used locally available timber to construct raised beds, often with planks or branches woven together to create a sturdy base. The height of the platform was carefully chosen, high enough to separate sleepers from the frozen earth, but low enough to remain within the warmth radiating from a central fire. The spacing of the wooden slats was also deliberate, allowing air to circulate while preventing cold drafts from passing directly beneath the bedding. In some cases, platforms were built to hold multiple family members, reinforcing communal sleeping and shared warmth while maintaining a stable and insulated surface. This approach demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of thermal physics by elevating the body above the cold ground. Tribes reduced heat loss through conduction, preserving precious energy in a world where every calorie counted. Woven mats were another essential component of elevated sleeping platforms. In forested or riverine regions, tribes harvested reeds, grasses, or flexible bark strips to weave mats that could serve as both flooring and bedding. These mats were lightweight, portable, and surprisingly effective at insulating against the cold. When placed atop a wooden platform or a pile of natural insulation like cedar boughs, they provided a soft, even sleeping surface that prevented direct contact with the frozen ground. The weaving techniques themselves were highly specialized, creating tight patterns that trapped air and minimized heat transfer. Some mats were reinforced with layers of hides or furs, further enhancing their insulating properties. The combination of woven mats and elevated structures created a layered system of thermal protection that was both adaptable and durable. Cedar boughs played a particularly important role in elevated sleeping platforms, especially in forested regions. Evergreen boughs were gathered in abundance and laid across platforms or directly on the lodge floor to create thick, insulating mats. The needles and branches trapped air, providing a natural barrier between sleepers and the cold earth. Additionally, cedar has aromatic and insect-repelling properties, making it an ideal material for bedding. Layers of boughs could be added or removed depending on temperature and available resources, allowing families to adjust their sleeping surfaces dynamically as the winter progressed. The use of cedar boughs exemplifies how tribes combined functional knowledge with environmental observation, choosing materials that were both effective and sustainable. The design and construction of elevated sleeping platforms also took into account the organization of space within the lodge. Platforms were often arranged around the central fire, ensuring that sleepers remained within the warmth radiating throughout the structure. In larger lodges, multiple platforms could be stacked or tiered, creating an efficient use of space while maximizing heat retention. The orientation of the platform relative to doors, windows, and smoke vents was carefully considered to minimize exposure to drafts. By paying attention to these details, tribes created a living environment that was comfortable, safe, and sustainable, even during extended periods of freezing weather. In addition to thermal benefits, elevated sleeping platforms provided practical advantages for hygiene and cleanliness. Sleeping directly on the ground could expose individuals to moisture, insects, and dirt, all of which were mitigated by raising the sleeping surface. Elevated platforms allowed airflow beneath the bedding, reducing condensation and keeping bedding materials dry. This was especially important in structures such as earth lodges, where the combination of indoor fires and cold outside temperatures could create moisture issues. Dry bedding preserved the insulating properties of hides, mats, and boughs, ensuring that warmth was maintained throughout the night. The attention to hygiene reflects the broader understanding native tribes had of human health and comfort in winter environments. The preparation of elevated sleeping platforms was a seasonal and communal activity. In the fall, families would gather materials, timber, mats, cedar boughs, and repair or construct platforms in anticipation of the coming cold. Elders and experienced builders guided the process, instructing younger members on how to construct sturdy frameworks, weave mats efficiently, and layer boughs for maximum insulation. This intergenerational transmission of knowledge ensured that every family member understood the principles behind the platforms and could participate in their construction and maintenance. The act of building elevated sleeping surfaces became both a practical necessity and a cultural practice, reinforcing community bonds and passing down critical survival skills. Elevated platforms were also highly adaptable, reflecting the needs of nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. In tipis, for example, platforms could be constructed as portable frames, easily disassembled and transported when families followed seasonal hunting routes. Mats and boughs could be rolled or stacked for travel, ensuring that warmth and comfort were maintained even while on the move. In more permanent structures like earth lodges, platforms were built with sturdier materials and often expanded over time, accommodating growing families or changes in seasonal requirements. This adaptability demonstrates the ingenuity of native peoples in designing solutions that worked across diverse environments and lifestyles. The cultural significance of elevated sleeping platforms extended beyond their practical function. Sleeping arrangements often reflected family hierarchy, social organization, and care for the vulnerable. Elders and heads of households were positioned in the warmest areas of the platform, while children and younger members were placed strategically to benefit from shared body heat and insulation. In some tribes, the platforms themselves were decorated or arranged according to spiritual or symbolic traditions, reinforcing the connection between the physical environment and cultural beliefs. The act of sleeping on an elevated platform was not merely about comfort. It was a reflection of social order, care for one another, and the integration of survival practices into daily life. Seasonal adjustments were also critical for maintaining the effectiveness of elevated platforms. As temperatures dropped, additional layers of boughs, mats, or hides were added to the platform, creating a thicker insulating surface. Families monitored wear and tear, replacing damaged materials to maintain thermal efficiency. Heated stones from the central fire were sometimes placed beneath bedding layers to provide additional warmth, radiating heat slowly throughout the night. The combination of structural elevation, layered materials, and supplemental heat created a microenvironment within the lodge that preserved life and energy, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of human thermoregulation and environmental adaptation. The placement of platforms relative to other elements of the lodge further enhanced their effectiveness. By positioning sleeping areas near the central fire, but away from smoke vents or drafts, families ensured that warmth was maximized while air quality remained safe. In larger communal lodges, platforms were arranged to allow for efficient use of space and heat distribution, while still maintaining privacy and individual comfort. The strategic arrangement of elevated surfaces reflects both practical problem-solving and social intelligence, balancing communal warmth with personal space. Elevated sleeping platforms also played a role in maintaining the integrity of bedding materials, such as hides and furs. By keeping these materials off the cold, damp ground, tribes preserved their insulating properties for longer periods. Moisture and frost could degrade hides if left in contact with the earth, reducing their effectiveness as thermal barriers. Platforms provided a dry, stable base for layering hides and furs, ensuring that families remained warm and protected throughout the winter months. This attention to material preservation underscores the thoughtful integration of different survival strategies, combining structural design with resource management. The combination of elevated platforms, bedding materials, and central fires created an integrated system of winter survival. Each element reinforced the others. Platforms separated bodies from cold ground, hides and furs trapped body heat, and fires provided radiant warmth that circulated throughout the lodge. This holistic approach demonstrates the deep environmental intelligence of native communities, reflecting centuries of observation, adaptation, and refinement. By designing sleeping surfaces that optimized comfort, hygiene, and thermal efficiency, tribes ensured that even the coldest nights could be endured safely and effectively. Elevated sleeping platforms were also essential for supporting mobility and flexibility in daily life. By raising sleeping areas, tribes could maintain clear pathways within lodges and tipis, allowing movement and activity even during severe weather. Mats, boughs, and platforms could be rearranged as needed, adapting to changes in family size, weather conditions, or the layout of the lodge. This adaptability was critical for both practical survival and social organization, enabling families to respond dynamically to environmental challenges. The communal construction and maintenance of elevated sleeping platforms further reinforced social cohesion. Family members worked together to gather materials, weave mats, and assemble frameworks, sharing knowledge and labor in a way that strengthened bonds and ensured collective survival. Children observed and participated, learning the principles of thermal efficiency, structural stability, and resource management. Elders provided guidance, teaching not only techniques but also the reasoning behind each decision, fostering an understanding of the interplay between environment, materials, and human needs. Food. In this way, the platforms became both a physical and educational tool, embedding survival knowledge within the cultural fabric of the tribe. Even in extremely harsh conditions, elevated sleeping platforms allowed families to sleep, rest, and recover safely. They reduced heat loss through conduction with the ground, enhanced the effectiveness of layered bedding, and worked in concert with central fires to create a controlled and comfortable living space. The careful selection of materials, attention to structural integrity, and strategic placement of platforms reflect a level of sophistication that modern engineering often overlooks, relying instead on artificial heating and insulation. Native American communities, through centuries of observation and experimentation, developed natural, sustainable solutions that optimized survival in cold environments. Elevated sleeping platforms also highlight the integration of human ingenuity with environmental awareness. Tribes selected locally available materials, minimizing the ecological impact of their constructions while maximizing effectiveness. Timber, reeds, boughs, and mats were harvested sustainably, ensuring that resources remained abundant for future use. Platforms could be adapted to different types of lodges, tipis, and climates, demonstrating flexibility and responsiveness to environmental conditions. This ecological intelligence, combined with practical engineering, made elevated platforms an enduring and effective element of winter survival strategies. The careful layering and arrangement of platforms also had psychological benefits. Sleeping above the cold ground, close to fire, and on soft insulated bedding created a sense of safety and comfort, reducing stress and allowing families to rest more fully. Adequate sleep and warmth were critical for maintaining energy, health, and morale during long winter months when outdoor activity was limited and resources were scarce. Elevated platforms, therefore, contributed not only to physical survival, but to emotional and social resilience, reinforcing the central role of thoughtful design in native communities' approach to life in extreme conditions. The interplay between platforms, bedding, fire, and social organization exemplifies the holistic understanding Native Americans had of winter survival. Elevated sleeping surfaces were not an isolated feature. They were part of an integrated system that combined structure, material science, energy management, and human behavior. Each element reinforced the others, creating a living environment optimized for warmth, comfort, hygiene, and social cohesion. The knowledge required to implement these systems effectively was passed down through generations, ensuring continuity of practice, refinement of techniques, and cultural transmission of essential survival skills. Through centuries of careful observation, experimentation, and adaptation, elevated sleeping platforms became a central component of winter survival. By raising families above the cold ground, insulating sleeping surfaces with natural materials, and integrating these platforms with other elements of lodge design, Native Americans created living environments that were comfortable, safe, and sustainable, even in the harshest climates. These platforms reflect not only technical skill and environmental intelligence, but also social and cultural values, emphasizing care for family, communal responsibility, and respect for the natural world. In every timber beam, woven mat, and layer of boughs, one can see the legacy of ingenuity, resilience, and deep understanding of the environment that allowed communities to thrive for generations. In the harsh winters of North America, survival required more than just fire, clothing, or insulated shelters. One of the most critical and effective strategies employed by Native American tribes was sleeping in groups. Families often huddled together during the long, frigid nights, using the natural warmth generated by human bodies to maintain comfort and stave off the deadly effects of cold. While modern perspectives may view communal sleeping primarily as a social or cultural practice, in the context of survival, it was a deliberate and highly effective strategy grounded in environmental observation, physiology, and social cohesion. The practice of sleeping in groups was intertwined with every aspect of winter life, from lodge design and bedding materials to family hierarchy, daily routines, and spiritual beliefs, reflecting a deep understanding of both human needs and the surrounding environment. At its core, the strategy relied on the basic principle that humans emit heat. Each body produces a measurable amount of warmth, and when individuals sleep in close proximity, this heat is shared, creating a microenvironment that is significantly warmer than the surrounding air. In frigid temperatures, even small differences in ambient warmth could determine the difference between comfort illness or hypothermia. Families instinctively recognized this, arranging sleeping positions so that the maximum number of people could benefit from shared body heat. Adults often positioned themselves in key locations to radiate warmth toward children, elders, or other vulnerable family members, creating a protective thermal network that allowed everyone to conserve energy and survive through the night. The physical arrangement of sleeping groups was closely linked to the structure of the lodges, tipis, and wigwams in which tribes lived. In earth lodges, which were typically circular and often partially subterranean, families placed bedding and hides around the central fire, clustering together in semicircular or concentric patterns. This ensured that the heat radiating from the fire was augmented by the additional warmth from the bodies themselves, creating a remarkably efficient heating system. The close proximity of individuals allowed for the retention of heat even in the absence of strong fires or during times when fuel was scarce. In smaller structures like wigwams, the dome shape naturally concentrated heat in the center, and sleeping in groups maximized the efficiency of this design, allowing the interior to remain comfortably warm despite freezing temperatures outside. Tipis, with their conical shapes, also benefited from communal sleeping arrangements. By clustering near the central fire or in designated sleeping areas, families created a warm zone in which children, adults, and elders could rest safely. The insulation provided by hides, furs, and layered mats worked in tandem with shared body heat, enhancing warmth and comfort. Additionally, the flexibility of tipis allowed families to adjust sleeping arrangements according to seasonal conditions, family size, or the availability of bedding materials, ensuring that the group strategy remained adaptable and effective across different environments and circumstances. The practice of sleeping in groups also had important physiological benefits beyond simple warmth. By sharing body heat, individuals reduced the rate at which energy reserves were depleted during sleep. Cold environments increase metabolic demands as the body works harder to maintain core temperature. In a communal sleeping arrangement, the shared warmth allowed bodies to conserve energy, reducing caloric expenditure and minimizing fatigue. This was especially important in winter, when food could be scarce and every calorie counted. Children, the elderly, and those who were sick or injured benefited most from this arrangement, as they were less able to generate or retain heat on their own. Communal sleeping thus functioned as a form of thermal medicine, supporting health and resilience through practical means. In addition to physiological advantages, sleeping in groups reinforced social bonds and cultural cohesion. Families shared space, warmth, and security, creating a sense of closeness and mutual care. Children learned early in life the importance of cooperation, responsibility, and empathy, as sleeping arrangements required attentiveness to the needs of others. Elders often guided younger family members in positioning themselves for optimal warmth, teaching not only survival skills but also social norms, respect, and intergenerational care. The practice of communal sleeping, therefore, served both practical and social functions, merging survival strategies with cultural education and emotional development. The use of shared bedding and hides further enhanced the effectiveness of group sleeping. Multiple layers of buffalo hides, deer skins, fur blankets, and woven mats were arranged to accommodate the group, with thicker or more insulating materials placed where needed most. Adults might sleep on denser hides to maximize warmth, while children were wrapped in softer furs to trap heat efficiently. The layering of bedding, combined with close body proximity, created a microenvironment that preserved warmth throughout the night, even during periods of extreme cold or when outdoor temperatures dropped below freezing. In some cases, heated stones were placed beneath bedding layers or near sleeping areas, radiating gentle heat that complemented both fire and body warmth. The result was a system of insulation and energy conservation that was sophisticated, sustainable, and highly effective. Sleeping in groups also provided a measure of protection against environmental hazards. In severe weather, blizzards, or sudden temperature drops, families were able to respond collectively, using their combined heat, knowledge, and organization to maintain safety. The centrality of children and vulnerable members within the group ensured that no one was exposed unnecessarily to cold air or drafts. Similarly, the arrangement of sleepers allowed for quick access to fire, water, or other essential resources in case of emergencies. The group's cohesion acted as a buffer against both environmental and social risks, reflecting a nuanced understanding of risk management in harsh winter conditions. The strategic use of group sleeping extended beyond individual families to larger communal structures in some tribes. In communal lodges, multiple families or extended kin groups would sleep together, sharing warmth and resources. The layout of these lodges facilitated the creation of warm zones, with sleeping platforms, mats, and bedding arranged to optimize heat retention for the entire community. In these settings, communal sleeping also reinforced social hierarchies, teaching younger members respect for elders and the importance of cooperative behavior. Knowledge about thermal efficiency, bedding arrangement, and body positioning was transmitted through observation and practice, ensuring that communal wisdom was preserved and adapted over generations. The psychological and emotional benefits of sleeping in groups were equally important. In long winters, when days were short, work was limited, and outdoor activity was constrained, the warmth and presence of family members provided comfort, security, and a sense of continuity. Children felt protected, adults shared responsibilities, and elders provided guidance, creating an environment in which both survival and social cohesion were reinforced. The act of sharing warmth became a symbol of care, protection, and mutual reliance, embedding moral and cultural lessons into the very fabric of winter life. Communal sleeping was therefore not only a survival strategy, but also a vehicle for maintaining emotional resilience and social identity in challenging conditions. The practice was adapted to local climate and available resources. In colder regions, families might sleep in larger clusters with denser bedding, while in milder winters, smaller groupings were sufficient. The arrangement of the group could be adjusted based on age, health, or individual needs, with vulnerable members positioned centrally for maximum protection. Such flexibility ensured that the strategy remained effective across diverse environments, from the frozen plains to forested river valleys. It also demonstrates the adaptive intelligence of native communities who combined observation, experience, and communal coordination to create living systems that optimized survival and comfort. Sleeping in groups also played a role in reinforcing ritual and spiritual practices. The warmth of the group, combined with the central fire and bedding arrangements, created spaces where families could engage in storytelling, song, and ceremony. Before sleep, these activities strengthened social bonds, transmitted cultural knowledge, and provided psychological support during the harsh winter months. The shared warmth of the group became intertwined with the emotional and spiritual life of the family, reinforcing the sense of safety, belonging, and continuity that was essential for both survival and cultural resilience. By clustering together, families could reduce the total amount of firewood needed to maintain warmth. The combined body heat of multiple individuals supplemented the heat from the fire, allowing smaller fires to provide sufficient warmth throughout the night. Similarly, shared bedding and hides reduced the total number of materials needed for insulation. This efficient use of resources was particularly important in environments where wood, animal hides, or other materials were limited, ensuring that families could survive extended periods without exhausting critical supplies. In addition, sleeping in groups fostered learning and skill development. Children and younger adults observed how elders arranged sleeping positions, layered bedding, and monitored fire and airflow. They learned how to maximize warmth, protect vulnerable family members, and respond to environmental changes, integrating practical knowledge with cultural traditions. This hands-on education ensured that survival skills were not only maintained but refined over generations, embedding a sophisticated understanding of thermoregulation, environmental adaptation, and social cooperation within the community. The communal sleeping strategy also intersected with other survival techniques. Elevated sleeping platforms, heated stones, layered hides, and carefully controlled fires all complemented the practice, creating an integrated system of warmth and protection. By combining these elements, families created a microenvironment in which the night could be endured safely and comfortably, even under extreme conditions. The interdependence of these strategies illustrates the holistic thinking of native communities who approached winter survival not as a series of isolated solutions but as a coordinated system optimized for efficiency, comfort, and resilience. Furthermore, sleeping in groups reinforced family and community cohesion, teaching values of care, cooperation, and empathy. Sharing warmth required attentiveness to the needs of others, awareness of body positioning, and responsiveness to environmental changes. It also provided opportunities for storytelling, instruction, and bonding, creating a sense of continuity and shared experience. In this way, communal sleeping was as much a social and educational practice as it was a survival strategy, embedding life lessons within the simple act of resting together. Even in times of extreme cold, group sleeping proved remarkably effective. Anthropological accounts and historical observations consistently note that families sleeping in close proximity within insulated lodges or tipis could endure temperatures that would have been lethal to isolated individuals. The combination of shared body heat, layered bedding, and environmental management created a resilient system in which survival was not left to chance but actively engineered through knowledge, observation, and cooperation. Over generations, the practice of sleeping in groups became institutionalized within native communities. It was integrated into lodge design, fire placement, bedding arrangement, and family routines, reflecting a comprehensive understanding of human needs in cold environments. It also reinforced cultural continuity. transmitting both practical and social knowledge through daily practice. Tutsui. Every night, as families huddled together, they not only preserved warmth and life, but also strengthened the bonds that held communities together and ensured the transmission of wisdom, skills, and traditions to future generations. The strategic, communal approach to winter sleeping highlights the extraordinary ingenuity and adaptability of native peoples. By leveraging natural human heat, coordinating group arrangements, and integrating bedding, fire, and shelter, tribes created living systems that were safe, comfortable, and sustainable. Sleeping in groups was not a simple convenience. It was a carefully considered, vital survival strategy that optimized warmth, resource efficiency, health, and social cohesion. It demonstrates a profound understanding of physiology, materials, and social organization, and it remains a powerful example of how humans can thrive in extreme environments through cooperation, observation, and intelligent design. Through centuries of experience, observation, and refinement, from small nuclear families and tipis to extended kin networks and communal lodges, the practice enabled survival in the most unforgiving winters, reinforced social bonds, and transmitted critical knowledge across generations. It was a living strategy that combined warmth, comfort, social learning, and cultural continuity, reflecting a holistic approach to life in harmony with the environment. In every shared body heat, every layered hide, and every careful arrangement within lodges and tipis, one sees the legacy of intelligence, cooperation, and resilience that allowed native communities to endure and thrive in conditions that would challenge even the most prepared modern humans. For Native American tribes enduring the harsh winters of North America, survival depended not only on shelter and bedding, but also on clothing and nightwear capable of insulating the body against extreme cold. The concept of layered clothing, which might seem intuitive today, was a sophisticated survival strategy honed over centuries of observation, trial, and adaptation. Families relied on multiple layers of soft leather, fur-lined garments, and tightly wrapped blankets to maintain warmth through long, freezing nights. These clothing strategies, combined with other techniques such as heated stones, centralized fires, and insulated bedding, created a comprehensive system of thermal regulation that enabled humans to thrive in climates that challenged even the most robust endurance. The approach to clothing and nightwear in Native communities was both practical and cultural, reflecting a deep understanding of materials, physiology, and the environment. The foundation of winter attire was typically soft leather, sourced from animals such as deer, elk, buffalo, or moose. These hides were carefully prepared through tanning processes that preserve flexibility and durability while enhancing insulation. Such as tunics, leggings, robes, and moccasins. Leather's natural properties, dense fibers, low air permeability, and slight elasticity, provided both insulation and protection from wind and moisture. Because these garments could be worn in layers, individuals could adjust their clothing according to activity level, outdoor exposure, or nighttime conditions. For example, heavier outer layers could be removed when near a fire or indoors, while thinner inner layers preserved core warmth without restricting mobility. Fur-lined garments added a crucial layer of thermal insulation. Tribes used furs from beaver, rabbit, fox, bear, and other animals, taking advantage of the natural warmth and loft of animal hair. Fur garments were often worn beneath leather outer layers, with the soft fur in direct contact with the body to trap heat and create a layer of insulating air. In colder climates, multiple fur layers could be combined, with denser furs near the core and lighter, softer furs around extremities such as the hands, feet, and head. This strategy mirrored modern thermal principles, using high loft insulation near critical areas while layering strategically to maximize comfort and heat retention. Fur-lined gloves, mittens, boots, and hoods further enhance protection, ensuring that extremities, which lose heat rapidly, remained warm throughout the night. Layering was not merely stacking garments, but involved a thoughtful arrangement to optimize heat retention, moisture management, and comfort. The innermost layer, closest to the skin, was often soft, breathable leather or thin fur that absorbed sweat while maintaining warmth. Middle layers provided bulk insulation, using denser furs, blankets, or additional leather garments to trap air and reduce heat loss. The outer layer functioned as a windbreaker and shield against snow, rain, or frost. This approach allowed for both versatility and thermal efficiency. Layers could be added or removed according to indoor or outdoor conditions, providing dynamic control over personal warmth. The principles of layered clothing demonstrated an intuitive grasp of thermodynamics and human physiology, ensuring survival in extreme cold without modern synthetic materials. In addition to layered garments, blankets and wraps played a vital role in nighttime insulation. Large buffalo hides, deer skins, and woven mats were draped over the body, adding a final protective layer that trapped body heat and reduced heat loss to the surrounding air. Some tribes used multiple blankets, layering them strategically to create zones of warmth, particularly around the chest, back, and extremities. The combination of clothing and blankets created a microclimate around the body, reducing the need for constant external heat while preserving energy and comfort. Nightwear, therefore, was not separate from daytime clothing, but an integrated part of a comprehensive survival system. Heating techniques complemented layered clothing and bedding. Some tribes heated stones in the fire and placed them near sleeping areas or wrapped them in blankets. These stones would retain heat and radiate it slowly through the night, supplementing the body's warmth and maintaining stable indoor temperatures. This method was particularly effective in lodges and teepees with central fires, as it allowed for consistent warmth even when the fire's intensity fluctuated or when fuel was scarce. Stones could be placed under bedding layers, around the feet, or near key body areas, creating targeted warmth. This approach demonstrates an understanding of thermal storage, conduction, and radiation, using natural materials to enhance survival and comfort in ways that mirror modern heating techniques. The cultural significance of layered clothing and nightwear was intertwined with practical use. Clothing and blankets were often decorated with symbols, patterns, or designs that reflected tribal identity, social status, or spiritual beliefs. Wearing and arranging layers correctly was also a learned skill, passed down from elders to younger generations. Children were taught how to select appropriate materials, layer garments effectively, and manage warmth during sleep or outdoor activity. This knowledge was essential for survival and reinforced social norms, responsibility, and respect for both nature and community. Clothing was thus both a functional tool and a vehicle for cultural transmission, merging survival strategies with identity and tradition. Layering extended to headwear and extremities, where heat loss is most pronounced. Fur-lined hoods, caps, and scarves were used to protect the head and neck, while mittens and socks made from fur or leather insulated hands and feet. In some tribes, moccasins were lined with fur and stuffed with soft plant material or additional hides, creating footwear capable of enduring extreme cold without losing flexibility or comfort. Layering extremities ensured that the entire body maintained thermal balance, reducing the risk of frostbite or hypothermia. This comprehensive approach to insulation demonstrates the holistic understanding that Native communities had of human anatomy, environmental interaction, and survival priorities. Preparation of clothing and nightwear was itself an elaborate process. After animals were hunted, hides and furs were carefully treated through scraping, tanning, smoking, or softening. These processes not only preserved the material, but optimized its insulating properties. Sewing and assembly required precision, as multiple layers had to fit comfortably without restricting movement. In some cases, fur and leather were stitched together, creating composite garments that combined flexibility, durability, and thermal efficiency. Even during sleep, layered clothing allowed for movement without losing insulation, ensuring that individuals could adjust their position, reach for bedding, or tend fires without becoming chilled. The combination of heated stones, bedding, and layered clothing created a highly efficient system of nocturnal warmth. While the fire provided radiant heat for the room or lodge, individual clothing layers trapped body warmth, and heated stones delivered localized heat where it was most needed. In addition, blankets and bedding acted as secondary insulation, preventing heat from escaping into the surrounding air. Through the integration of soft leather garments, fur layers, blankets, heated stones, and strategic layering, Native American tribes ensured that winter nights were survivable, safe, and even comfortable.